Hello and welcome to You Should Hear This, a podcast for the Everyday Association Professional. I'm Chris Beeman, your host. Today's podcast is brought to you by Visit Bloomington. In the heart of the U.S. Midwest, Bloomington, Indiana is the perfect place to host a small to mid-sized meeting, convention, or conference, offering unique and flexible venues available to groups of up to 400 people, as well as a hub for higher education at Indiana University, a nationally revered culinary scene, and natural wonders like the Hoosier National Forest and Monroe Lake. Bloomington is sure to wow your guests during and after your event. Go to visitbloomington.com to start planning your next meeting. Now I get to introduce our guests. We've got two today. First is Shaun Ballard, who is an experienced professional who spent nearly half of his 10-year career in higher education, working in financial aid and admissions, and the other half in sales for destination organizations, working with meeting and event organizers to make their events shine. Shaun has been the convention sales manager at Visit Bloomington for 3 years and loves living in B-Town. Prior to Visit Bloomington, he was a business development manager at Discover Kalamazoo. Shaun also serves on the board of directors for the MPI Indiana chapter and is actively involved with the Indiana Society of Association Executives. In his free time, he enjoys camping, hiking, golf, and craft beer. One thing he didn't include in his bio that is important to mention is that Shaun was also the ISAE Supplier of the Year in 2023. So Shaun's an amazing person. Next up, Jessica MacMillan is an enthusiastic professional with a deep passion for tourism and event management. She currently serves as a meetings and membership coordinator at Rayburn Group International, where she focuses on supporting associations and creating impactful events. Jessica holds a degree in tourism, conventions, and event management from IU Indianapolis, complemented by certificates in business foundations and tourism planning and development. She's developed a strong understanding of how tourism and events align with CVB growth objectives. Her experience includes organizing large-scale events such as the Total Solar Eclipse event in April 2024 at White River State Park in Indianapolis, which attracted over 30,000 visitors. This achievement highlights her ability to collaborate effectively with CVBs and community partners to deliver successful outcomes. Jessica's dedication to the tourism industry began in 2014 during a transformative experience as a foreign exchange student in Munich, Germany. Welcome, Shaun and Jessica.
Thank you, Chris. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So one thing of note, Jessica, you just worked with Shaun recently to host an incredible ISAE annual conference, ICON. And so I think I'm going to turn our first question over to Shaun. Shaun, how do convention and visitors bureaus, like Visit Bloomington, support meeting planners in creating successful events?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you, Chris, for starting off with that. I really think the role of a Convention and Visitors Bureau, or CVB, sometimes we're called destination marketing organizations or just destination organization. There's several different ways that we call our organizations, but for short, we'll just say CVBs. We're really trying to be an extension of the meeting and event organizer. What we really want to do is to elevate their particular conference, convention, event, meeting, whatever that may be in our community. And we try to do that, and we're really proud to do that for groups that could be a board meeting of 15, 20 people up to a full-fledged 3-day convention that's 500-600 people. Every group we treat with the same sort of level of service that we have to offer at Visit Bloomington. And like I said, being an extension of the meeting and event organizer, it's one of the most important jobs, one of the most stressful jobs too, that I'm sure Jessica can probably allude to at some point today. But we really try to alleviate that stress as much as possible on the particular event organizer or the event organizing team for that conference. And that's connecting people with local resources that we have. For example, in Bloomington, whether that be for catering that may be needed for an event, the context at various venues that are being used, the hotels. We really try to be a middle person between the venue and hotels, et cetera, in Bloomington and the particular event organizer. And again, just try to take some work off of that particular person.
That's awesome. So, Jessica, turning over to you, Shaun mentioned all of these resources from the perspective of the meeting planner. What are some of the most valuable resources or services that a CVB provides?
Yeah, I love that Shaun said extension because it does feel like that. When you're planning with the CVB, it really does feel like they are an extension of your team. They're there to help your team. I think that the biggest kind of resource or service that a CVB can provide is the knowledge that they have about the destination. I don't have to spend any time looking for a venue that's going to be perfect for my event. And I don't need to do any research about restaurants or anything that's in the area because I can reach out directly to the CVB who knows their area best and they can recommend something to me. So instead of looking at a venue that's totally going to be out of my price range, it doesn't even match the size of my event by sending, an RFP or just by reaching out to the CVB, they can tell me exactly what's going to fit for my event. So I think that's the most valuable really service that they can provide is just knowing their destination best. And that seems not that doesn't seem like a very big thing, but it's huge because it saves so much time.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you. One of the questions I had was just about time and money, because I think those are the two things that are so heightened right now in associations. We're trying to save time and we're trying to save money given the budget. So I appreciate you sharing that. Are there other ways, I guess, turning this over to both of you, are there other ways, or do you want to dive a little bit deeper into maybe one specific way that CVBs can help organizations save time and money during the planning process?
Yeah, I think another way that CVVs can save money specifically is sometimes you can partner with your CVVs where they can outsource. They can search for grants or other opportunities for your organization. So, say a certain destination isn't in my budget, but I really want to go there. I can connect with the CVB and they can provide me with different funding opportunities that might allow my organization to go to the destination that I want to. And I think that that's a really powerful tool that CVVs hold. They have those connections, they know about those type of things, and I think that can't be understated.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. One of the things as far as the money aspects is, Chris, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head for sure with the challenges associations have is, we do budget, and I'll speak for Visit Bloomington, but I do think many other CVBs have this resource too, is we really are intentional each year to budget certain dollar amounts to be able to help an organization maybe for transportation because they want to do an offsite event in Bloomington. They maybe want to do or maybe the meeting rental fee at the particular facility that fits them in Bloomington is maybe a little bit over their budget. We can come in and say, hey, we know how important this group is to our community. Let's see how we can help with that. What it could be AV and just really bridging that connection of people in Bloomington, venues, hotels, restaurants, different services, could be floral even. I mean, there's so many things that we have, knowledge of, like Jessica said earlier, and just trying to make sure that it's a best fit. And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes it just, whether it's affordability or whatnot, and that happens. But we certainly want to give a good faith effort and try and work with a particular organization. And as far as time, to kind of dive into the basics, really, Jessica sends me an RFP, has, this number of attendees, how many hotel room nights we expect, et cetera, all those various details an RFP has, rather than her emailing our convention center and this hotel and that hotel. I can do that for her. So that saves just a lot of time and then she can focus on the actual planning of the conference and the various details with that. One of the things we did with, ISA East convention in Bloomington in July is we were able to work with Indiana University, who it's a great asset for us as a college town because there's a lot of knowledge there, a lot of subject matter experts, I'll say. And one of them was on ethics. And that was a credit that was really kind of lacking in previous years for the CAE, particularly. And I said, hey, I actually know somebody that talks about ethics. He works at the Kelley School of Business, made that connection. Fast forward to the convention, he was a fantastic keynote speaker. So, and he actually, we did have to pay them, that particular person, but since he was local, I made that connection. It was half of what he usually charges. So that kind of speaks to the time and the money specifically.
I think going off of the money piece too a little bit, when, we send the RFP to the CVB and you look at it and you see the concessions that we're requesting, the CVB holds a little bit more weight than we do. So instead of me sending that RFP to a meeting venue and saying, these are all of the things I'm requesting, instead having someone like Shaun reach out to them and say, we really want this group to come here. We'd really like for you to meet these concessions. They have more of that bargaining power that we don't, and they've already created those relationships. So that saves time and money, even if you can't really put a price tag on that.
Yeah, those are awesome examples. And Shaun, having attended the event where you brought helped to bring that speaker in. I mean, I can say, and serving on that planning committee, I think probably he was one of the highest rated keynote speakers ISAE has had, because I think part of it was everyone sort of thought, oh, an ethics presentation at, 8 in the morning. And it turned out being interactive. It turned out being, I mean, it was a great experience. And I think that's a great example of a way that the CVB helped to save time and money and also provided some local expertise. So yeah, kudos to you, and I love that example. So let's talk about a little bit more of local flair, because when people attend whatever size event, it could be, like you said, a board meeting, it could be a huge national or international conference. Oftentimes attendees feel like they rarely have time to get out and see and experience the city. And Shaun, I loved how for the happy hour opening reception, you worked to bring in some of those local flavors. There were some, meatballs from a local hotspot that were popular, and there were some other examples. I I want to kind of dive into that attendee experience and maybe have you both touch on some specifics of how working with the CVB can truly impact the overall attendee experience within our meetings and events.
Yeah, it's really about, and I used the word a little bit earlier, really elevating the conference or convention. And sometimes I have the notion of, when I'm bidding a particular piece of conference or an RFP that comes my way, we all as a destination, or many of us have, great hotels, great restaurants, convention center, some kind of conference center. So you kind of have a potential even playing field, even though there are some maybe unique features with each destination, including Bloomington. It's one of those extra things where people are going to go home and say, wow, I really enjoyed having a conference in that community. And we'll say Bloomington for this example. And for us, I kind of mentioned restaurants. Yes, we have great restaurants like most other communities. For us, what's a little above and beyond is we have 2 blocks downtown that's just international restaurants. And a part of that is the impact of Indiana University being a global campus, having, 15 to 20 different types of cuisines is pretty remarkable. And we hear that from convention attendees all the time of, yeah, it's great to be able to do that because I like Thai food or Indian food or Korean food, whatever that may be. And they are able to do that during maybe a free time. Maybe there's a free night where dinner isn't provided at the conference. This actually happened at ISA too, but happens at other conferences we host where people will be like, I want to, wake up at 6:30 in the morning before the event starts and go on a run. Where can I go run? And I'll point right behind our convention center and said, hey, see that? That's the Beeline Trail. And that's a pedestrian trail all through downtown, 3.1 miles. And people are like, oh, wow, it's right there. So very convenient to bring in that wellness aspect, because that's a really big part of people traveling and going to conferences and events and how they can maintain their mental and physical well-being while traveling. But we really do focus on the local vendors that we have. And for many conferences, we'll work with a local chocolate company. At ISA, we had the little chocolate Oreos. That's from a local vendor. I know some folks were really excited for those. From the floral arrangements at events, we'll do those locally. We really try to build up our community, because as we look at it, we're bringing in all these people to the community. How can we give back, so to speak, and support the people that make Bloomington great? And that's how we try to blend that localization with, people coming from, in this case, all over the state, but could be all over the country as well.
Yeah, I think the Visit Bloomington team did a fantastic job at Icon of showcasing the local flair and making sure that everybody at the event knew what there was, where they could go, the different things that were available to them. I think from a meeting planner perspective, we love helping the city. We love helping the CVB, the county, wherever we are. We love helping them show off what they have, because we want people to enjoy their experience in that destination. But I think on the other side of that, we love it because if you're putting your best foot forward and if you're showing what you have locally, our attendees are going to have a better time and they're going to associate that with our event. So while you're showing off the stuff that you've got and the fantastic things that you have to offer, our attendees are having a memorable experience at our event that makes them want to come back the next year, even if it's not in the same location. So we love it for both of those reasons.
Yeah, we all, I always say that we try to, really make your survey result that much better because it's a win-win. It's a win for
Mhm.
Bloomington. We look great. Everybody had a great time, and people are going to have great feedback for you as the conference and event organizer. So we really try to, again, make that a win-win situation.
Definitely the food ratings were off the charts for Icon, and that was definitely attributed to all of the expertise that went into sourcing all of the local talent. So
Yeah, having been there, I can understand why. So, maybe there are meeting planners who are listening into this podcast or people who are adjacent to the space who are maybe feeling like they're not yet fully utilizing their local CVB. What advice would you give to association leaders or meeting planners to start engaging their CVB? What does that process look like? Who do they reach out to? What do they ask? You know?
definitely. I think that the first step is always just to start the conversation, whether that's if you have a membership with MPI, getting onto MPI and doing a member search and looking for just your local CVB. I'd say start small. Start with your local CVB and start a connection with them. If if you're doing it through MPI, if you're reaching out to another meeting planner that you know, if you're reaching out to a venue in the area that you're familiar with, somebody will have a connection with someone at that CVB. So ask them to make that introduction and just start the conversation. I'd say ask them to go out for a cup of coffee. Just ask them to sit down and talk with you about your organization and the types of things that you're looking for. Because as soon as you introduce them to who you are, they're going to keep you in the back of their mind. If there's a new space that pops up in the area, they're going to reach out to you and let you know about it. So I think the most important thing really is just starting that conversation, and if starting it small feels better, then your local CVB, I think, is the best place to do that. And then from there, it'll feel like a natural extension going forward and looping the CVBs and the destination that you're going to, looping them in and asking them to help facilitate the conversation. I think when you reach out to your local CVB first, you can ask them the types of services that they have. So they can give you that information and you can have a better idea of how they can help you. And I think there's no better person to tell you about the services that they have than themselves.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and that's perfect, Jessica. I appreciate all they had to share, and it's really, yeah, reaching out to us, and certainly what I've done in my current role, previous role is some people are like, I don't know if we can bring our meeting to your particular community based on whatever factor it may be, but could I come do a site visit and check out, this venue, that place? Yeah, absolutely. We welcome that. We love any chance we can to show off our community, even if it's for an hour or two, on a Tuesday afternoon. So I want to reiterate that, and if there's travel expenses associated, because there likely will be, please let us know. We can do what we can to make that happen.
That's awesome. Shaun, this question's probably more for you, but Jessica, you may have some to share as well. I'm curious about, are there common misconceptions about working with CVBs? Are there things that people might believe to be true that are not fully accurate? And how can associations overcome these misunderstandings to better leverage CVB support?
And no one misconception that it's not as probably as maybe it was decade ago or whatnot. But just in my 6, 7 years in the industry is, we're just trying to put the phrase that always goes as heads in beds because that is how we are funded. In all transparency, the more hotel room nights that are filled in our community, the more revenue that comes into our office. That's truly just a fact. And that is important. I mean, that is a budgetary thing. However, we really look at the full economic impact. And we talk about that all the time in our office, but just as a destination marketing organization as a whole, of whether people stay in it or don't, they're still coming to our community and spending time and potentially their money in restaurants, shops, things like that. So it's really trying to give a more full picture, and that we're not just trying to, again, put people in hotel rooms because, and there may be still some misconception about that. I'm sure there, I don't think it's as, like I said, prevalent, but we're all about economic impact and a step for quality of life for our residents as well. That I kind of allude to a little bit as well, and really making our local residents that make our community run happy and want those visitors to come to our community.
I appreciate that perspective a lot, Sean, and the fact that it's not about that, it's about so much more than that. I think another misconception that I've heard is that CVBs are only there for the logistics of your event. They're only there to get you a hotel block. They're only there to provide you with a brochure about the destination, when that's not what a CVB is. And they have so many more services that they can provide to you. You know, they can help you with marketing campaigns. If you need things to be pushed out about the destination that tie in with your event, the CVB can help with that. They can help you source for different things that you didn't even know you were looking for. So I think a lot of times people associate a CVB with just the logistics and the, getting from A to B, when it's so much more than that. And they can find letters in between there that you didn't even realize were there.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in working with CVBs just because that's not necessarily, my role, my lane, but I do my experience has been in talking to people who work for CVBs, they have such passion for their community, no matter how big or how large. I mean, you could talk to someone like Shaun from Visit Bloomington, and he can tell you all about the city, who you need to connect with, all the different resources, or someone from, a market like Chicago, and they know all the same things. They know the people, they know the resources. And I always, I just love all the passion, that they bring. And I find that it, sort of uncovers different opportunities that I hadn't previously thought about. So I would love to maybe, because I think we've talked a lot about icon, and for the listeners who, for those listeners who are familiar with that, I think that'll resonate with them. But I'd love for each of you to maybe share another example of a successful collaboration between you and a meeting planner, or you and the CVB, and what made it work so well. I'd love a perspective from both of you.
I can start, Chris. I think back to when I was in Kalamazoo actually, and it was not even maybe 6 months into my job, an opportunity came across to host a really large event that would be incredibly impactful. It was a national high school mock trial championships, and I was like, I don't even know what mock trial is, but let's dive into this opportunity. And I got connected with the local attorney in Kalamazoo, and through talking to him and other people, I learned that Kalamazoo had a particularly strong mock trial high school program. I was like, okay, great. That's an advantage there. But where it really kind of got into the weeds that I did not expect was they needed more than a hotel slash conference center. I mean, that was critically important, but they needed to use courtrooms like 20 to 25 for this competition. And so it was going to see the courthouse, going to see how, if a conference center could turn their meeting space into a sort of courthouse, courtroom type of feel. And so, I mean, it took a good year to really dive into, because there was a ton of logistics. I'm not going to say go into today, but there was just a lot of moving pieces, a lot of people involved in the community. And, I never thought that collaboration would happen. Because that was when I first started in the industry, it was kind of like, okay, I'm working with hotels and conference venues and maybe restaurants. This opened a whole new world. And now it makes me think of like, okay, we have Indiana University here, whether it's faculty, staff members, they're a part of associations. What are some collaborations there that we can partner with? We mentioned the speaker earlier. There's certainly a number of opportunities to do that because of the great professors and faculty we have at the university. But yeah, working with, local attorneys and kind of the justice system was not where I expected it, but it ended up being a really great collaboration in that particular role.
Well, and I love that example. I appreciate you sharing that. I think two of my key takeaways from what you shared, you mentioned how long the process took. It'd be to start early, right? And so, start these conversations early, especially in point number two, when you have something that is a dream, something that maybe you've not done before, but you're curious about, share that with the CVB. Say, could we? What would it look like if we tried this? Because they can be sort of, a brainstorming partner in addition to connecting you with those resources. So I love that example. I appreciate that, Shaun.
Sean, I appreciate that, because a lot of times when meeting planners are coming into destinations, we don't know about the things that we don't know. So it's nice to hear that from a CVB perspective, there have been times where you didn't know what you didn't know. So I appreciate that. I think a time that I've had a successful partnership with a CVB in the past, I don't have a ton of experience, but in my senior year of college in my capstone course, we had an event planning course where we um, partnered with Visit Indy and White River State Park to put on a solar eclipse event downtown. And that was a really unique experience where, as young professionals, we were able to be in the room with some important people and facilitate these conversations where, we wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise. So in that instance, when we were talking with Visit Indy, they gave us insight to all of these different things that we didn't even know we needed to know about. So they were able to tell us about how many people they were expecting for the event, how many room nights had been booked in Indy when we had absolutely no idea what the scale of the event would be. We had no idea how many people would be there. And because Visit Indy was in the loop and they were able to have conversations with their contacts, they could give us a better idea of how many supplies we needed to have for the event. They were also able to help us with marketing for the event. So they were able to get with local news channels and to let people know about what was happening downtown and have people come out for that. So I think that was a really successful partnership because we were working alongside each other. They obviously wanted to drive revenue into the city and they wanted people to come to the event because of that. But we wanted it to be successful because it was the only event of its kind that was happening, in that space in that time. So we wanted to be successful for those reasons as well.
That's awesome, Jessica. I think, from what you were sharing, one of my key takeaways is we may not always realize the intel and insights that a local CVB is able to provide us, right? And I think there's actually a known example. We, in planning an event in a local space, we found out sort of through a rumor, grapevine type of deal that there was going to be a half marathon coming. And we knew we had people driving in, and it was like, I mean, the event was still like 4 months out, but of course we're feeling like super stressed about it. The maps, aren't very clear. And so we went to the CVB and said, "Hey, what do you know? Like, what can you give us?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh, we know everything. We can do all this. It's just not necessarily public yet." And so we were able then to start thinking about how our communications needed to look in advance on that day. We could start preparing for that with a simple question of, what information can you provide? And they're like, of course, we can give you all of it. So, I appreciate you sharing that, they have access to that intel of hotel room nights to know what to project, what to anticipate. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yes. And I think that just goes to show you should always ask, even if it's something that you don't think it's a service that the CVB provides, just ask because they probably do know something and they just didn't know you wanted that information. So I think it's always worth it to at least have the conversation.
Absolutely. The last question, we always like to ask some sort of trend related, futuristic question on this, just to kind of get the feel for what you're thinking 5, 10 years down the road. Specifically, I'm curious, do you see the role of CVBs evolving and changing as meeting and events adapt to changing industry trends and or attendee expectations in any way?
Where my mind went is going back to 2020 when, travel and tourism and conferences, stopped obviously. And it took a while for those to come back. But when they did come back, they came back very strong, very quick. And, local communities, and this is a national kind of maybe global trend that, we weren't ready because we didn't have the staffing at our restaurants and hotels and conference venues. And that service level that a lot of us pride ourselves on just wasn't there. And while that has improved, you can still look at travel data, travel outlook for, leisure travelers, but also meeting and event planners and people coming for conferences. People know that, restaurants may be short staffed and retail shops, and they still expect an extremely high level of service, which is almost contradictory. And it also kind of makes sense too, in a way of what people's expectations are. So how do we as a CVB navigate that and try to help with that? It's a challenge and it really hasn't been solved at this point. And I'm thinking of ourselves locally where, we do as best we can to give restaurants a heads up, and be very communicative. We talk about that a lot today and really give them a heads up of, hey, we have this conference. There could be a group of 20 to 25 people. Like we had ISAE in town. We knew certain venues would be busier in the evening. made sure they had a heads up well in advance to staff appropriately, things like that. And that is helpful. But looking ahead, it's definitely challenging because we want to have great service. You all as an organizer want to have a great experience because you want to have those great survey results and great conference feedback from attendees. So it really all is kind of this big circle. And it's definitely something I'm seeing getting better and always going to be an improvement needed.
I appreciate that, Shaun, because coming into, a restaurant with a bunch of people, having somebody able to coordinate that and communicate that beforehand makes all the difference. And it's something that sometimes maybe we don't even think about because we're busy handling other things. So the fact that someone else is thinking about that for us is so important. I think another trend that's popping up is, we've got AI coming up everywhere. And, we've talked about it a lot in the way that it's changing the service industry and the way that, it's going to evolve in the future. And with the trend, I think I see CVBs becoming even more vitally important because from my perspective, yeah, I can get on ChatGPT and I can say, give me the top 10 restaurants in Bloomington and it can spit some stuff out for me. But that piece of technology has never actually been to that place where Shaun has. So nothing beats being able to go to a person and say, can you give me your specific experience in this place and tell me what you recommend for me? So I see them as more important. I think I value them more because as information becomes more readily available, I think that we need to rely more on the experiences of other people. And I don't think anyone can do that better than a CVB can in their destination.
I love that you brought that up, Jessica, because as someone who is currently planning a personal trip to Europe, one thing that has recently struck me is as I'm searching, place things to do, I got an algorithm sent me an article that said, if you only have 36 hours in Florence, Italy, here's how you should spend it. And as I'm reading it, it's like, oh yeah, that's great. That's great. And then it occurred to me, all of these are sponsored posts, right? And it's not that I'm necessarily opposed to looking at them, but I'm the type of person that I want to hear it from a local, right? I want to
Mm,
know, like, what would you do? How would you? And so these places with big money are able to be a part of these sponsored posts. And again, there's space for that. But to your point, if someone really wants that local flavor and local flair, I'm going to go to a local CVB because they're the group I'm going to trust, right? They're the ones who, as I mentioned earlier, they have the passion for it. It's not just, a place coming in to sponsor and say, if you only have a day in Bloomington, you need to check out this bar, this restaurant, whatever it may be. So I appreciate that.
Well,
absolutely.
and we've talked about, Jessica put it perfectly many times, but that knowledge and yeah, or I have knowledge of the hospitality related industry, restaurants, etc. But really, I try to keep abreast of just any general community knowledge. Like, for example, what road construction is going to be happening because we actually had that this summer because they're doing work still on the busiest road in Bloomington. That could
Mhm.
affect traffic. Oh, students are coming back at the end of August. That adds another 40,000+ people to our community. That's going to make traffic a little heavier in Bloomington. Not that it's anything like Indy or on 465, but you get my point of, just like you really have to, or I take a lot of pride in just knowing not everything going on in the community, but trying to really just broaden it, that it's not just don't silo myself into just the hospitality and my, quote unquote my world, but what else is going on that may be of interest to a group and what should they know before they actually come here?
Well, I want to thank you both for joining me today to pull back the curtain a little bit on the relationship with association meeting planners and CVBs. I think it's been really insightful. I've got a few takeaways that I actually didn't anticipate walking away with today, so I'm sure listeners have some notes as well. So I really appreciate you both.
Thank you for hosting us,
Yeah.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thanks again to Visit Bloomington for sponsoring today's podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode of You Should Hear This. If you have any questions that you'd like answered or future topics you'd like us to explore, please send us an email at info@isae.org. Thank you for your leadership of your associations, and I'll see you over on the next episode of You Should Hear This.